this roof that can help a lot of people, even if you're here just to optimize your performance with brain health, cognition, processing speed, all of these things. So we'll move through it, but there's this concept that really is the bottom line of what we're going to be talking about today, and this thing called neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. If you're looking to improve your cognition, your memory, your spatial orientation, your executive tasks, my gosh, I keep forgetting where I put the keys, right? Or what's that person's name again? Or, damn, Woodward or Moss gave me that cognitive test at my annual exam and I couldn't remember the third word that they gave me. So, how do we shape the brain? Neuroplasticity means we can mold it and reshape it, right? Because as we age, every system declines at some level. The question is, at what rate is it declining? And can we slow it down, stop it, and maybe even reverse it? Okay, so how do we turn on the neurons for regrowth and new connections, new synapses? How do we strengthen those? And how do we prevent the environment and our lifestyle from causing this decline at an accelerated rate? So these things are synergistic, so we'll talk briefly about some of those, but BDNF is something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is the thing that we want to stimulate. This is the thing we want more of. This is the thing that's going to repair damaged neurons. And some people, I don't know if anyone drinks alcohol or watched the Texas OU game this weekend, but there may or may not have been a couple beers drinking during that game that could have damaged, and we want to repair those things, right? Or let's say it's air pollution, or you had mold toxicity in their home. How are we going to repair the brain if that occurs? Traumatic brain injury. I like to box. I still box. Mike Cannon boxed with me one time. And so repetitive injury to the head, which I try not to let happen too often, can certainly cause some injury here. Traumatic car accidents, who played football, right? Those types of things. Who was in the military and had some things happen to them. So this is, BDNF handles how the immune system handles this. It handles how the cognition works, but we want to turn on BDNF so we can create a repairable brain, okay, the nervous system. So if there's two overarching concepts I would say that we focus on, and if anyone knows me, if I've ever done your lab review, I usually start with this, and I say, all right, there's two overarching concepts that affect all disease states. Inflammation and oxidation, right? They increase disease, whether it's atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease, whether it's neurodegenerative diseases, whether it's an autoimmune disease, you name it, it's part of it. Whether it's just part of aging, right? The lumps and bumps of aging. So we want to make sure that we can turn down this reactive oxygen species that's creating this oxidative stress that causes damage to our cells, our neurons, our DNA. And we want to quelch the inflammation. There's some simple things that you'll leave today with ideas about how to do that. So there's one other thing I want to mention real quick, and I forget to do this because this is another thing have you heard me talk about inflammation and oxidation? Okay. So the other thing that I usually tell people is there's 3 cell membranes in our body that we want to protect at all costs. Can you name any of them? It's a brain talk. But the gut-brain barrier, okay, there's the gut barrier, which is a single cell layer thick. We want to protect it at all costs. Because if things leak out of that gut, they can damage the brain and cause inflammation. That's why we call it the gut-brain connection. There's a single cell layer in our brain called the blood-brain barrier. And if that gets leaky, it lets toxins in, it lets inflammatory mediators in, and it causes damage. It causes neuroinflammation, which can disrupt function, and then my memory is causing a problem because that neuron is ill and sick. My connections aren't firing right. So the third is the lining of our blood vessels. It's called the endothelial layer. That's the layer that allows the blood vessels to dilate and constrict, right? So they're all related is the thing. So if the gut is leaky, the brain is leaky, the vascular system is leaky. And then they don't function well. So think about the 3 membranes, single cell layer thick. We want them to be nice and tight and healthy. When they're loose, things can leak through and cause inflammation and oxidation. So those membranes are critical. So we're going to talk about how do we safeguard those. But in functional medicine, like I like to practice, have you heard of functional medicine before? Yeah? Yeah, I don't need it. So functional medicine is what we used to call the opposite of dysfunctional medicine. It uses a lot of integrative, holistic approaches, lifestyle medicine approaches, but it also uses the conventional pathways. And it puts them together under one precision model. And it might say, for Kevin, what's Kevin's unique problem that we're dealing with that's causing these leaky membranes, that's causing uncontrolled neuroinflammation, that's causing oxidative damage? Maybe it's a genetic defect. Maybe it's a mutation. Maybe it's his diet. Maybe it's the ice cream. I didn't have to laugh at that. Maybe, maybe it's something else, but precision medicine, why I put these studies up here, these all have proven that they've improved cognition in people through big data sets and some small data sets. But guess what the conventional world has not done yet? Is they've not improved cognition in anybody with any of their drug therapies. None of them. Aricept, Namenda, none of them have worked. Now they have the new lecanemab and docinamab. They don't increase cognition. They just, in the new drug, it's decreased the loss of cognition. It's kind of like the osteoporosis drugs. They're not really good at growing new bone, but they're trying to help prevent the loss and the rate of bone. But they have side effects. And so, if I'm in this game to improve my cognition and preserve it, then we need to turn on this functional medicine perspective and the lifestyle perspective. So, this is just Alzheimer's is the third leading cause of death. It's a big deal, right? Don't be afraid of breast cancer. Be afraid of Alzheimer's, right? This guy will take away your brain health and leave you in a shell. This is how my grandmother died. She has what's called the ApoE4 variant, genetic variant. Has anyone ever been tested for that? You don't have to admit it if you have. We tested it. Yeah, so I have something called the ApoE34 variant, and it increases my risk by 30% for Alzheimer's. But it's not genetic determinism, because we can reduce that risk down to the average, down to 9% or 8%, which is the average risk in the population. So now if you're an ApoE44, your risk goes up to 80+% that you're going to get Alzheimer's disease. And there's 3 more gene variants. That means you will likely get it, and you'll get it in your 50s. And we can talk about those 3 genes as well. But this is a big deal, 46 million people. A lot of these people don't even know they have it yet because they're not symptomatic. You get Alzheimer's, people have Alzheimer's brains 20, 30 years before they're diagnosed. So the time to start talking about it is with people in their 30s, the young ladies behind with the delicious baked goods over there. That's the time to start talking about it. The time to start talking about osteoporosis is when, not when we do our DEXA scan at 65, which is why I'm a proponent of being the DEXA at 40. Let's go way upstream so we're not waiting until we have brittle bone disease, right? So this is the functional lifestyle medicine perspective that we're looking for. So we can actually do something about it. So we don't have to live with a fractured hip or compression fracture in spine. So who's at risk? Well, ladies, 2/3 of the people getting diagnosed are women. And so you have 2 times the risk of men. Some of the reason for that is women live longer than men. You got that going for it. Age is the #1 risk factor, but it's pretty much the #1 risk factor for all diseases, isn't it? Vascular disease and cancers and traumatic brain injury, like we talked about with the boxing. Insulin resistance is probably the #1 thing I would say. If there's one thing that I would stamp out immediately, it'd be blood sugar metabolism. So there's this whole new concept of immunometabolism in the brain. And so if we can fix the metabolism and support that, you will seal up those 3 barriers that we talked about, especially that blood-brain barrier. Vascular disease is a big deal. So if we have multiple in this microvascular system of our brain, if there's a lot of small plaques, well, there's less blood flow to that tissue. That tissue is not going to thrive. That tissue will ultimately fail. And of course, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, the vascular risk factors. Male gender has something to do with it because the vascular risk is much higher typically. Even though women get it 2 times more. But when men get it, they don't last as long. Nutrition deficiencies, I'll talk about some of those. Sleep is mission critical. You will increase your risk by 60% if you don't sleep well. So, I don't sleep well, I admit it. I struggle with that one. So, I mean, who falls asleep and then wakes up at 2, and then 3, and then goes to the bathroom 3 more times, right? And then forget it, I'm just gonna get up. So, genetic risk is a huge, huge marker, and the ApoE4 variant that I talked about is the biggest one. But, you know, living alone, having a partner, having a pet, get rid of smoking, continue to learn. All of these things play a role in cognitive decline. Who knows that the #1 physical activity that prolongs life or longevity? I know I've told you about it. What do you think it is? What physical activity thing prolongs life more than any other activity? Walking. That's what I would have put walking right up there. It's not, but it is up there. I would have thought bicycling maybe, you know, because it's, you know, less pounding. So golf, 6.5 years to life, right? You guys are like, tea time tomorrow. So it's like the country club sports, tennis, pickleball. It's a social thing. Social isolation is a risk factor. So we want to make sure that we're engaging, right? This beautiful weather we've had lately. Get the sun in the retinas of your eyes. Turn on those good hormones. And so I thought strength training would have been really high up there. It only added about 1.5 years to your life. Even though I think it's more important than that. But so we'll talk about some of these. So this is just the pharmacotherapy. There's risks of bleeding with the new IV drugs. I actually have a patient who's at Duke who's getting one more right now. And so I'm hopeful that she's going to embrace this functional perspective as well. So none of them have been shown to improve cognition, and there's a lot of symptoms. And I'm going to bring up a few other genes. Annie, you had mentioned that we did the ApoE with you before. I'm going to mention some other genes today that also carry heavy risks. And if you have the ApoE4 and you have those other genes, it compounds the risk. So, and some of these drugs will worsen if you don't measure all the genetic variants. Okay? So, these are the new high-tech meds that are out there. This is the one that they're getting at Duke and all these places. What they're measuring here is their cognitive score. It's called the MoCA test. Corinne has given lots of MoCAs in our clinic before. So the MoCA test is a Montreal cognitive assessment test. And so when you use a precision model, they get better. People's scores go up +4. If you look at, there's a neurologist by the name of Dr. Dale Bredesen that Stacy is certified in the Bredesen protocol for cognitive optimization and improvement reversal. He's improved it by up to 9 points before in some of his folks, which is significant. I think what's the high score? 29, 30?
30, yeah.
30. So you see, these are the best drugs we have available, and they're still getting worse, and there's risks. So that's why we want to improve all of these symptoms. We want to improve the memory and the word finding and the misplacing items and things like that. So, but the decline is interesting. So this is the 47 million that we're talking about. Could be even higher, right? Could be like 84 million if you include the asymptomatic people. These are people who have disease, but they're not even aware of it yet. So this is why Dale Bredesen would say, what does he say, Stacy? The first time you should check is 35 or 40 years old. Check to see if you have the tau 217. Check to see if you have the amyloid ratios, which we can get in the blood now. First time, just in the last 1.5 years, we can get these. Before we had to do a spinal tap and check the cerebral spinal fluid for these markers. Now we can get them just in the last 2 years. And so by the time you get to mild cognitive impairment, these are the times to act. When people get full cognitive a decline, they're not able to participate in their own treatment plan. They don't do well. And we've tried on some folks when they get to that point. It's very hard. It doesn't mean it's impossible that they can make improvement, but it's very difficult. So the goal is, right, if their cognitive impairment is here and we raise them 4 points, we might bring them back to independent living again if they're in between here. And so maybe I can function and stay in my own place by maintaining brain and slowing that down and maybe even reversing it. Through the precision health plans and the modalities that are under this roof, you can actually improve brain volume. It's unheard of, right? People disagree with that in the conventional data sometimes. They're like, that's impossible. They had neuroradiologists oversee those tests, and they said, okay, let's do another third-party review, and they said, no, this is right. In fact, it's even better than we thought. So vascular disease, you can do this. We've shown this with vascular disease through a precision model, not just a statin, but a precision model of health can reverse vascular plaquing. Some cardiologists will tell you, no, I don't see it. That's because all he does is write scripts sometimes, right? I had a cardiologist when I was a resident that I rounded with that said, I don't expect you to do anything I won't do. Just take the meds. And again, it doesn't mean the meds are bad always. It just means they don't move the needle enough if we're looking to really perform well. So, you know, the time to repair, right? John F. Kennedy said this, is to repair the roof is when the sun's still shining, when you feel good, when you're able to engage at a high level, when you're able to turn on these mechanisms that sleep, exercise, diet, nutrition, not when I'm in the wheelchair, right? Not when I'm so far gone with the hormones. I think most women should be on hormones right now. And that's a whole other talk. We had a hormone talk here too, but we're gonna bring it back and talk about hormones again. So we have to activate that BDNF because that's what turns on that neuroplasticity and remolds our brain and turns it back into functional neurons. So there are pillars of health in the brain that we focus on: sleep, the proper food, the exercise, right? The connections with people in our community, the education piece, some meditation, remove root causes. This might be the mold that I mentioned earlier, or Lyme disease, or potentially someone with a high neuroinflammatory diet. Maybe somebody that just needs a lot of repair. Maybe they were in a horrible car accident, they had traumatic brain injury. And then the microbiome, that's the gut piece. Have you heard of the microbiome before? The bacteria in the gut, they play a big role with a lot of things. So the blood-brain barrier is a big deal. And again, this is one of those membranes that we have to protect at all costs. So they have tight junctions in them just like we do in the gut. Tight junctions keep the cells close together so they're not leaking other proteins through it, okay? Lots of new diagnostic tests. What I'll tell you is the ones that I was alluding to earlier are the tau 217, the amyloid ratio 42 to 40. These are things we can get in our own clinic. I'm hearing, you know, the neurocode. Do you guys use the neurocode, Stacy? Neurocode is a Bredesen recommended. He believes that that lab is a little bit more sensitive for the tau 217, but it directly correlates with Alzheimer's disease. So I'm going to get it. I have 3-4. I haven't gotten it yet. MRI volumetric scans, we can get those for about $350 at a Novant facility, and they apply this volumetrics. They look at how big the volumes of the hippocampal regions of the brain are, which is the memory centers of the brain. And we can compare those over time. And they'll apply the software so you can say, do I have inappropriate atrophy? Is my brain shrinking at a rapid rate? Or what can I do about that? And we're going to talk about, if it's atrophying, what trophic factors, what factors can I give the brain so it grows and stays healthy? And this is what I was alluding to earlier, is through some of these precision protocols, the brain is full again. The brain is functioning better, usually as it correlates to the volume of the brain. You know, doing appropriate cognition tests, and there are neuropsychiatric tests, experts out there that we can send to. So, I just talked about some of these markers. Neurocode is the company that can do these tests. And these are the 4 big tests that they recommend, which will give you the highest prediction of where are you in this race. And if you implement the interventions, can you slow it down? Can you change it? Will you have less of this tau protein, this phosphorylated protein, showing up in the lab test? Because if it's at high levels, we know that there's problems going on. Okay? So there's other significant biomarkers here. And so NF-kappa B is the master inflammatory marker. TNF-alpha, this is what rheumatoid arthritis folks get for autoimmune diseases, right? They get these big things that snuff out the inflammation so they can walk. Homocysteine is a big one. Inflammatory markers, I get these on everybody in our clinic. Of course, Dr. Moss and I get both of these, and A1Cs. Blood sugar, again, is a big deal. So these things are critical to brain health. But I add homocysteine onto my annual exams now because as the homocysteine goes over 14, so does the risk of Alzheimer's disease. It's linear almost. So this is something that you can always ask for at one of your lab visits if you want. And it's a good marker to look at. If it's very high, you may have a genetic abnormality that we can always add to your labs called the MTHFR gene, if you've heard of that before. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday gene, some people call it, some other things. So here are some other genetics that we can get for you. ApoE4, there's 3 variants of this, and this is probably the most significant one to start with. And there's an ApoE2, there's an ApoE3, and there's an ApoE4. And so the folks that have the ApoE4 have the increased risk. If you have 1 copy of it, you're a 30% increased risk of Alzheimer's. If you have 2 copies of it, which you get one from mom and one from dad, your risk goes up to 80+%. And then that's good to know because maybe you might want to tap into that precision model a little sooner. Right? Oh, I better clean my act up here. Right? That Halloween candy's come. You know. So if you have these 3 genes, it's a bad deal. That one is almost genetic determinism. There's not many people that have these 3 genes that escape progressive rapid decline of Alzheimer's disease. So these are things we can get. We have things called the Clotho gene, which is the big talk in the town and in the world of science with longevity, the TOM40. What they're finding is if you have the ApoE4 and the TOM40 or the BHCE combinations, your risk goes up to 15-fold higher because of these connections. But if you just have the ApoE4 variant, you don't have these, sometimes you may not have this either, and then you go down to the risk is with the average population. So it's good to have someone look at your genes, especially, does anyone have a parent that had significant dementia? Yeah, I think my dad has it, that's where I got my E4, I think. So, it's pretty, people can hide it. You know, we can get around it. We can talk our way around it at times. And the smarter we are, the longer we can hide it. So these are just some genetics to think about. The gut-brain connection, like we talked about, leaky gut, leaky brain, the 3 membranes we have to protect. We have a test called the KBMO. Kareen, our health coach in the back, goes over this with a lot of folks. And the KBMO has 2 proteins in it called the gluten and the zonulin. Let's see that one here. Which is what holds these cells together. And we can test that in a blood spot in our clinic. And then we can also test this guy called lipopolysaccharide. This one, if it gets out into the bloodstream, it goes to the brain and it causes inflammation. And people with high concentrations of LPS tend to have more neurodegenerative diseases. They tend to have more decline faster. So if we fix the gut by doing some of these GI tests and doing precision functional gut health, we can shut down this axis and shut down the neuroinflammation and the oxidation. So, hormones, mention hormones here. I was going to do this like a Q&A style, but you guys doing okay with this style? It's a lot, right? It's a lot. But hormones are great. All of these things can impact the brain. All of them. These are trophic factors. These keep the brain full and healthy. testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, pregnenolone. You may not have heard of some of these, but some of these, we have some people on these. And melatonin. Cortisol can work against us. If there's too much, it can cause atrophy of the brain. It's the stress hormone. Excessive amounts of stress, people see significant cognitive decline, even on their ratings of the health tests. I mean, I don't think any of us would argue with that. You know, that stress can really disrupt pathways. Estrogen is a big deal in the brain. It lowers that inflammatory marker in the brain. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. It attaches to certain receptors that do a very good job of this. Exercise in the brain. So again, the big thing with exercise, it's the most potent stimulator of BDNF that we talked about, that brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's the low-hanging fruit. There's nothing more impactful to brain health than exercise. Daily exercise and some intense exercise turns it on potently. In fact, you can see rises in it 40 minutes after a bout of exercise. So it's significant. And so we actually call this an exerkine now when we're exercising, because it stimulates through feedback signal mechanisms to increase BDNF, which repairs the brain. So it's fantastic. Exercise is the key. It affects our microglial cells, which are some of the immune cells in the brain too. It turns them into the safe microglial cells. These are the immune cells that kind of clean up the debris, clean up things for us. So, supplements. I put this up here just to say that there's a lot of brain supplements out there that we can talk about. The question is, do they work, right? Which ones work, which ones don't? It's hard to know. People come in, do you think this one's good? It's got a million things on the back, right? There are a lot of good ones. There's been a lot of study with just blueberries. There's been studies with carotenoids and lutein and lycopene. There's studies with lion's mane. Have you guys heard of lion's mane? Lion's mane is a mushroom. Lion's mane, love lion's mane. There's good data on lion's mane. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and turns on BDNF. It's great. And if you haven't tried it, you should try it. There's a mushroom coffee that actually works really. Have you tried that? Yeah. It might be. Four Sigmatic is the one I'm thinking of. Host Defense. Corinne really likes Host Defense. Do you guys like lion's mane?
Yeah, it's in most of our happy juices.
Oh, yeah, they've got great supplements here, brain supplements. So, again, which supplements are going to quench the oxidative stress and which ones are going to turn down that inflammation? One of the best ways to do it is with omega-3 fish oil, but not any fish oil. It has to be good quality. So, important there, because when they've done these high-quality tests on these, some of the stuff over the counter has saturated fat, it's oxidized oils, horrible. And it has to be a nice balanced oil, DHA and EPA. Dr. Moss, I know some people are Dr. Moss's patients, likes Carlson's, and it is a good brand. It's a good over-the-counter brand, actually. I like Carlson's myself. I use Ortho Omega. We have it in the office, but it's a good brand. So I'm not going to get into the weeds about these, but I will say this, is that vitamin D, there's more data on vitamin D than we can shake a stick at. We just want it, we don't want it just at 30 or 35, even though it says it's in the normal range. We really want it closer to 50. 50 to 80 is a really nice, healthy range. Women have less breast cancer. People who had COVID lived better and less admissions to the ICU, and there were less deaths with people with higher vitamin D levels during COVID. So less neurodegenerative conditions, less MS, less other neurodegenerative conditions with it. Vitamin D is a pro-hormone, it's fantastic. So, I'm not going to get into the weeds. Choline, that's what's in our eggs. Choline's fantastic. Pregnant women should be eating lots of choline. Smart kids. So, there's data on nicotine. I put that in here in case someone brought it up, but I'll leave it alone for right now. Not smoking cigarettes. But there's little nicotine pouches. I don't know if you've seen some of these. They're really low dose. It's still have it for me, so I'll just leave it there. Methylene blue. This is something that they have here. Stacy will talk about that. Phosphatidylcholine. Phosphatidylcholine stabilizes membranes in the brain. And it stabilizes membranes in an area, in a little organelle called the mitochondria. And that's the area that we create energy. That's what turns on our brain. And so, they can give it here through the IV, and you can also take it orally through supplementation. The IV can work almost immediately. Glutathione, they can give it here through the IV. This is the master antioxidant. This is the one that helps the liver, but it crosses the blood-brain barrier as well, just both of these do, and can get into the brain and do wonderful things. They also have NAD here. NAD, I just started NAD. And so I feel a difference.
That's awesome.
I mean, I'm lack of sleep and I still feel pretty sharp despite, I probably have a little tired voice. NAD is fantastic for some of these things. There's some other supplements, I won't get into the weeds. So a few studies on ashwagandha is great for the folks that have ApoE4. Lion's mane is fantastic, like I said, increases BDNF. Berberine lowers inflammation, the TNF alpha inflammatory markers. So a couple things I want to run through are some other modalities with brain health, and then we'll do kind of a take-home. And so sauna therapy and brain health, and I think, Stacy, you probably have even more, right? You probably have a ton of literature on this. But, and Kareem, you recommend it a lot with your coaching. So sauna bathing associated with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And this was a big study for the sauna folks. So not only did it increase longevity, but they showed it impacted cognitive function and performance. Lots of studies. Anyway, you see the point here. There's good data on it. They also have a red light bed in the back, and so it's a red light. We call it photobiomodulation. So there's different wavelengths of the photobiomodulation, but it boosts that thing called mitochondria, which is the thing that creates energy in our brains. And it reduces inflammation in the brain. Early research is showing benefits with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and just healthy aging. We have people that come in here and we say, I'm part of the longevity program. I want to continue to do this stuff to keep my tissues healthy and aging. I want to prevent this. I don't want to be reactive. I want to do this when the sun is shining as well, is when I want to work on the roof. I'm not going to talk about the transcranial devices. I don't work with those, and I think they're pretty expensive. But again, there's just more and more things, executive functioning, memory retrieval, that there's some early data that's showing some benefits here. Hyperbaric, this beautiful hyperbaric chamber right here. There's a lot of benefits with hyperbaric oxygen. Have you guys done hyperbarics? So a lot of the initial studies were in Israel, and they worked with a lot of traumatic brain injury folks, PTSD, some mood disorder folks, but they've tapped into the cognitive improvement folks and those pathways. So interesting, if we're going to turn on neurogenesis like we talked about in the beginning, and we want better oxygenation and mitochondrial support and mitochondrial biogenesis, meaning we want more mitochondria for more energy. If you look at a marathon runner's thighs, it's very dense with mitochondria from conditioning. The hyperbaric chamber conditions to pump in and stimulate more mitochondria. It actually helps with the vascular flow into the brain. The more vascular flow, the healthier the brain. Ginkgo biloba, have you guys heard of ginkgo biloba? Ginkgo has never been shown to help with cognition, but what it did show is it showed it helped with blood flow to the brain. So it's a mechanism that could potentially help. Right? All of these things. Some people, hyperbarics, will claim that they sleep better. Again, the way that this was studied with the chamber, Stacy knows the data more than I. I'm going to leave this up to her. But traumatic brain injury folks, what they found is cognition improved in a short period of time. Very short period of time. So I wanted to just get that in. Stacy, I won't take that thunder. Sleep. Are you guys familiar with Matt Walker's book, Why We Sleep? Great book if you're struggling with sleep. He really breaks down the neuroscience on this and recommendations. And what he just talks a lot about sleep hygiene. How do we get there? If we're not sleeping, we're at high risk of neural decline, cognitive decline. So sleep is a big deal, right? Who was it? Margaret Thatcher who said, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." You know, and but And who's lived that life? You know, you just burn and churn. You're trying to be a high producer. You have people that need you. So that's why I left the ER full time. I couldn't do the shift work. Could never find a rhythm for good sleep. I did not want to take a tranquilizer to sleep during the day. So our delta deep sleeps and our REM, we should be getting at least a little bit of that. Trying to get a total of at least 7 hours. Our oxygen saturation should be higher at night. These wearable devices that are out there can give us some insight on that. And there was a sleep talk here just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, last week. Yeah.
They did a great sleep talk with lots of great valuable information. And there are some peptides. I do prescribe some of these peptides. So these are peptides they're enhancers in what they call neurotrophic factors. They regrow the neural membranes. They stabilize things. They increase performance. Cerebrolysin is amazing. The FDA took it off the market recently. They're going to make a drug out of it, I'm sure, because it works that well. There was a Stanford physician, she's an endocrinologist, Yale endocrinologist. Her son was at Stanford and got trampled and stomped. His head was stomped through one of the riots. And he was in a coma. She gave him cerebrolysin every day. He's made a full recovery in a short period of time. So he had traumatic brain injury. So it is important where you source these from, and some of these do have limited human trials, which is why they're not full-blown on the market yet. But we do have some of these. Last thing, which diet to choose? We have to be careful with general recommendations, right? This is the Precision Health Plan. ApoE4 folks have to be careful of high fat because it can increase vascular disease. But some keto is good, and some Mediterranean high nutrition in terms of the Mediterranean and plant-based nutrition is very good. So everyone should have a plant-focused approach with some more fat and adequate protein. So this is where not everyone should get 75% fat, but generally most people do better on a ketogenic diet. And so it's important to check that if someone's really on the treatment plan. So ApoE4 here, we got to consider the fats, low saturated fats, but good with the healthy fats. So the functional medical approach are these things. So the right diet, the right exercise that's going to turn on BDNF, and what I recommend to most people with exercise is two stiff bouts of exercise a week. And at our annual exams, I talk about VO2 max and what that looks like, and we should have you in a certain range for that. So we want you in the upper quartile for VO2 max, so your fitness status, right? That's like the Peloton workout, putting a weighted vest on and going straight up that hill until you're gasping for air. Walk down, catch your breath, go back up again. It only has to be 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be a 45-minute, rowing bout of exercise. Strength work is important, and general movement, right? You're pushing blood across the blood-brain barrier, it turns on BDNF. Fish oil and exercise are the biggest potent stimulators of brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So is hyperbarics, so is red light. Sleep is critical, stress, right? I could have gone on about a lot of these. Lots of supplements. These probably have the best data, and the data for supplements at this time. There's other supplements that are helpful. The biomarkers such as the insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is mission critical. We have to reverse the blood sugar metabolism. We have to optimize that. We have samples in our clinic of continuous glucose monitors. Great recommendation. If you guys want, come on in and say, hey, I want to try one of those. It Bluetooths to your phone. It gives you real-time information about what is this glass of wine going to do to my blood sugar in an hour? What is this, my favorite pasta dish, going to do? That sort of thing. And so we can give you and help you hone in on the biomarkers of health. Vitamin D, I get magnesium and zinc on everybody. We can do omega checks now. We can see what your omega check fish oil is. So that's another nutritional biomarker. And the genetics, without pulling all those out, the ApoE4 is one we can get right through Quest or LabCorp. I don't know, can you get the Tom 40 through Quest or LabCorp?
I don't know, I just know through.
There's some specific Alzheimer's DNA packages that you could do for that. and the advanced modulators. These things are the accelerators. If you want to get better faster and accelerate your healing time, these are potent. The hyperbaric oxygen, the photobiomodulation, the sauna, and Stacy will give you a little bit more information about the brain map. She can even fine tune and say, here are the specific concerns in your brain with the QEEG technology. So, it's a lot, right? I packed a lot in. But the idea is a precision plan and focus on the right stuff. You know, when people come in, they're like, what are my numbers? And I say, you tell me, what are your numbers? How many steps a day? How many hours of sleep? How many servings of fruits and vegetables? Did you get a good belly laugh in this week? Right? What hormones are you on? There's a woman today, she's, I'm 68. What do you mean? Progesterone is good for everybody, forever. You know? And that was a big hormone talk that we just had. However, what does progesterone do for women? They sleep. They sleep soundly. It's great. It's a calming nootropic for the brain, if you will. Turns on the gamma receptors. So, I'm going to hand it over to Stacy here in a second, and then we'll take some questions if that's okay. Does that sound okay to you guys? All right, cool. I hope nobody is a PowerPoint expert, so you critique my stuff here.
As Mike's setting this up, one of the reasons that we created OptiHealth was because of the things recommended in the Bredesen protocol. My dad had frontotemporal lobe dementia, and first I wanted to prevent that in myself. But I also wanted to share those tools with other people. So the things that we're going to talk about, Dr. Woodward brought them up. They're here for a reason. They're here for cognitive health. We like to be known as Brain Health Center, and it's pretty exciting work. It's really fun to see somebody who's struggling and then come back and have a little hope, know that they're not getting lost when they drive here, that they're remembering things, that they're sleeping well. So all the tools we have here we're going to chat about. So that Bredesen protocol, the other name for it is Apollo Health, is a reversing Alzheimer's protocol. And Dr. Woodward talked a little bit about MOBA scores and what MOBA scores look like. Dr. Bredesen has actually taken somebody from a MOBA score close to 0, and that person was able to return home from a nursing home that they have for Apollo Health a year later after implementing the things in the Bredesen protocol. I'm also certified through the Amen Clinic, so a lot of what we talk about is combined Amen Clinics and Bredesen. And this is my why. My dad was a physician, small town Wyoming, who had frontotemporal lobe dementia. We had the opportunity to bring him into our home for the last 5 months of his life. Very progressed with his dementia. He wasn't ambulatory. He could barely talk. And in that 5 months, just by changing his diet, getting him out in the sun, doing some NAD, and doing some supplements, he started reading again. He knew us. He could hold a conversation with my sisters over FaceTime and knew who they were. So I would say his MOBA score is probably about a 9 when he came into our home. And just to see him regain that function and be able to enjoy his family again and not feel locked in his brain was pretty exciting. And so I've seen it work. I know it works. I wish I could have gotten him in my chamber, but our chamber is not the correct chamber for somebody who's not ambulatory. But he actually enjoyed life, and he started standing. He started telling us when he needed to go to the bathroom. So if you can imagine for 4 years not being able to tell somebody that, and just with some small changes being it, that's life changing. And it gave him his dignity back, which was so fun as his daughter. So the Bredesen protocol has been shown in 2 separate studies. The first study, 74% showed stabilization or improvement. And then 84% in the second study showed improvement and an increase in blood volume, or the brain volume, just with the Bredesen protocol. And these are the pillars of that protocol. Within that protocol, Dr. Redison does recommend other modalities, which is what you see here. And I will say that most of the people that I am coaching through the Bredesen protocol improve the most when they implement the protocol and they're doing other things. So those folks who have done hyperbarics or EWOT. Dr. Woodward talked about exercise. People ask us all the time, what kind of exercise? And basically, yes, you need exercise, right? We need the aerobic exercise to balance your blood sugars, which is one of the top reasons for cognitive decline. We need to build that muscle, right? But we also need the HIIT exercise, where you're going to get your heart rate up, you're going to bring it back down, heart rate up, bring it back down. What that does is it funnels blood and oxygen to the front part of your brain, which is the executive processing part of your brain. It's also your filter. So if you're worried about what you're going to say later in life, we really got to get some HIIT exercises in there so you keep that filter. That's what a lot of people worry about. These are SPEC scans from Amen clinics. SPEC scans look at blood volume and they look at electrical activity. When parts of the brain are not getting oxygen to them, we see a brain like that. This is what a normal brain should look like under a SPEC scan. Toxic brains who have had a lot of toxic exposures the surface of the brain will actually look like a golf ball. It will just have divots all over it. So there's a lot of information that we can get from the SPEC scan, but I just put that in there just because we need to get oxygen to the brain. Exercise with oxygen training, or IHIT, is this gadget right here, right? This bag here is little too. We have an adaptive contrast system. That top bag is 95% oxygen. The bottom bag is 14%. So it's like you're in the Colorado Rockies at about 12,000 feet. So it's a high altitude trainer. The folks that use this regularly, first they're sweating, right? But we're increasing that VO2 max, which Dr. Woodward also talked about. We can increase your VO2 max by about 11% over a 3-month time period with regular use on this machine. But here is a study on EWOT. Bob Barker, Price is Right, he had this EWOT system in his home, and he was using it at 94 years old. Pretty sharp, pretty good choice for him. But this is what we see and I didn't write down the numbers of people who went through this study. I think it was 40 people who went through this study. DEMTEC is another type of cognitive assessment. So by using EWOT alone, we saw improvements in cognitive scores. We also saw improvements on the 6-minute walk test, which as a PT, that is a significant thing for me because that means people are going to be moving easier, they're going to have better balance, they're not going to fall, they're not going to end up in that nursing home and start spiraling. I will tell you, this is a 15 to 20 minute workout, so it's not like you're going to be here for a long period of time, but you will leave here with a runner's high. You will feel really good when you get done with our EWOT. We talked about oxygen, hyperbaric. Everybody could do hyperbaric, you really should. I think everybody should do 40 sessions to get started because of the effects that it has. This is an MRI of blood flow studies prior to hyperbarics and after hyperbarics. And the significance of this, look at that frontal lobe has lit up and the temporal lobe. Your hippocampus that Dr. Woodward talked about is right in here. That's your long-term memory center. So we're increasing blood flow there. We're increasing blood flow to that filter that people lose when they have dementia. That's why they shout out inappropriate things. And we're getting attention and focus and all those executive tasks that you need to continue to function in society. When I do a brain map on young kids, we talk about those are the tasks you need to hold a job and to learn. And so we've got to get oxygen here. As I go, if you have questions, please ask me. I know a lot of people don't know what hyperbaric oxygen is. It's essentially oxygen under pressure. Typically, oxygen is coupled with the red blood cell. If this is your red blood cell and this is the oxygen molecule under pressure, they actually uncouple and this turns into a liquid, and so it can travel very deep into your brain. We have a daughter through adoption who had significant traumatic brain injuries prior to adoption, and we saw a dramatic healing in those, and then we treated her 11 years after she sustained these injuries. So hyperbarics really is a miracle if you can get there. protocol is adding cold. Does a number of things. I usually have my coaching clients start with cold showers, so increasing the time. I have a coaching client right now whose wife keeps it in there in the cold shower, but it has been the biggest game changer for his cognition, so much so that he's sharing that with everyone. He knows you should be taking cold showers. It decreases inflammation, but here's that mitochondrial biogenesis. So we want to boost your mitochondrial health. We want to feed your brain, and the cold plunge does that. We learned last week in the sleep talk that if you cold plunge an hour and a half before bed, your sleep will improve significantly. So if you're traveling and you don't sleep well on the road, Tara, the sleep scientist, said you can just hold ice packs in your hand and put one on the back of your neck, and that can get your body to a cooled state so you have good sleep. So that was a great little tip for us. We're quoting the same studies, so those are good studies, right? We love the sauna. What we haven't addressed a lot of is detoxification, and the sauna can bring out heavy metals, organic chemicals, and those mycotoxins. So if you have some of those tests and you know that you're carrying those things in your body, we got to get you to sweat, and we've got to get you to sweat either on this bike or in the sauna to get those toxins out. I should go back to my hyperbaric chamber. Some people question the safety of hyperbarics. Everybody here on staff is certified as a hyperbaric technician, which means they've had at least 40 hours of hyperbaric training. We have a safety director here, and our chamber is filled with air, and you breathe oxygen through a mask. So there is not a risk of fire in our chamber. There have been a couple accidents in some 100% oxygen-filled chambers over the last 2 years, and so that makes people a little wary. We've taken that risk away by having an air-filled chamber here. Dry brushing was just brought back into the Bredesen protocol, and we provide dry brushes for the sauna if you need them, and you probably haven't been to them. This is really important for getting your lymphatic system to move throughout your body, and it's nice and easy, right? But this is so nice that there's a diagram that says we want to brush that up towards your heart. We want to get things moving and pumping and then sweat them out, right? We have a couple of other tools here that we recommend for lymphatic flow. We have a flow presso system, which is a full body compression suit. This is actually an Australian product. It's a medical grade device out of Australia that is prescribed over there for lymphatic flow. Probably the best nap you will ever take is on the flow presso table, so if you're a little stressed out, this is one of the great things to do. Rebounding. This is also recommended within the Bredesen protocol, so just a little jogging tramp, right? And you don't even have to do it for very long, but that gets your lymph system moving. It's actually more effective than running with less effort. It will tighten up all your muscles, so if you're looking for some low back support, it's great for that. Improves cognitive health significantly. So these are things that we incorporate in addition to diet, sleep, exercise. We talked a little bit about brain training and how important it is. The Bredesen protocol recommends Brain HQ as an online game to test your memory and to do it every day. They actually recommend 30 minutes a day. There are a couple others that are easy, but we do a little bit different brain training here. We start with a brain map, so that gal's wearing a brain map where we're looking at the electrical activity of the brain. And we can look at alpha, beta, delta, and theta waves, and we can see if they're in regulation or out of regulation. If they're out of regulation, say your beta waves are out of regulation, meaning they're too too high, they can cause depressive thoughts. They can cause excessive self-concern. We see that a lot. And we also see fibromyalgia pain when alpha waves are too high. So if we train those through neurofeedback training, we can get a reduction in pain. It's pretty amazing to see. Neurofeedback training we do in the back room here, where we can send home units home with you, and that's how we address brain training here. Here are some QEEGs that we've done here in the clinic, just so you can see the differences in what we can pick up as a screening tool. Delta and theta, when they're really high like this often indicates inflammation. When it's in that frontal lobe up there, FP1, FP2, F3, F4, we might be wanting to screen for heavy metals. When it's high in the T3, T5 area, right over your ears in the temporal lobe, then we're probably going to be talking to you about your food choices, needing to couple your carbs with your fats, because your blood sugars are actually impacting how your brain's working. And this is also right here, this is somebody with delta and theta and alpha are high. This is probably somebody who has some significant sleep dysregulation and they're not getting restorative sleep. Come down here, your beta waves are your thinking and processing brain waves. When those are really low, it's like the lights aren't turned on when you're trying to do something, you're trying to learn something, you're trying to hold a job, speaking in front of people. We see this a lot with screen time addictions because it drains your dopamine every time you take those hits. We see it with pornography. It's the same thing as if someone had a drug addiction. This is how the brain would look. So we do have those conversations with people when we see beta really low. And a common pattern for ADHD, if you have someone in your family, is delta and theta being very high and beta being very low. So the brain is basically telling you when you're awake that you should be sleeping, and hey, it's going to be difficult to pay attention to something. So these are great screening tools for us. This brain down here is a pretty stressed out brain because everything has dropped low. Blue and light and dark blue are really low. That's the magnitude or power of each of those brain waves. So we use this, we do comp them usually, and if somebody's going through a whole neurocog program with us, so we have this to get a baseline. And if somebody comes up and their delta waves are really, really high, we're probably going to increase their time in the hyperbaric chamber. And we see that with our veterans who go through our PTSD program and have been exposed to a whole lot of toxins. When we remap them after using the chamber and doing our feedback, all of those have normalized. And then personal supplementation. We carry the Amari line here, which is the mental wellness company, for the reason that it uses all those nootropics that Dr. Woodward is talking about, lion's mane. The pre and probiotics actually work in the gut to create positive neurotransmitters, so those dopamine that we were lacking on the beta waves, serotonin, GABA, all those things that we normally supplement with, we can create in your gut, and that gut-brain axis is so important. When someone comes to me and they have anxiety, sometimes it could be caused from the gut and could be impacting the brain. Sometimes it's in the brain and they have a stomach ache from it. We don't really know, so we treat both ends of that here. We love this supplement line, and I would say this has been the thing that helps people be more compliant with the other things that they're doing because they feel good very quickly. I have a couple of tools for you that we can share with you. We do have a sleep manual from our sleep talk last week. There is one new thing in there that we just put in our bed in our room last night, and it's a local company. They have this jelly sleep mattress. My husband had 50% REM and deep sleep last night, so it was awesome. Night number 1, and I was not hot when I slept last night, which is for women, that's a huge thing, right? Because usually heat wakes you up. So I'm happy to talk to you about that. The developers of this mattress system live right
Stacey, I just wanted to give a plug to the gluten-free girls back here.
Yes.
There were some pretty interesting studies for some folks who have real sensitivities to gluten, and they actually had some plaques in the brain around the ventricles of the brain that looked just like MS. And they went, have you seen those MRIs? And so they actually thought that these folks were diagnosed with MS because they were having neurologic issues. They went gluten-free and their neurologic status completely cleared. My daughter has celiac disease, which is severe gluten sensitivity. And so we're in a weird house on the block. The kids come over in our pantry, it's boring. But my son is dairy-free, I'm dairy-free. So they're like, where's your stuff at? We're not that boring and stiff, but it's
And I would say when someone comes in for brain health, whether it's a child or an adult, the first question I ask, do you eat gluten, do you eat dairy, do you eat sugar, right? And those are the top 3 offenders for causing inflammation. So we appreciate you coming very much, especially with that granola back there.
Yes, sir. D's gluten-free.
D's gluten-free.
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing up the neurotransmitters too, and the gut health, the microbiome. Most people don't realize that the majority of our neurotransmitters are manufactured in the gut by B vitamins, short-chain fatty acids from plant fibers. So it gives a whole new meaning to what does your gut tell you, right? What is your gut instinct, right? That's where dopamine and serotonin, 80% of it is made, even though they're brain hormones, right? There's actually drugs that help motility that are serotonergic drugs. Dopamine with folks with ADHD and your stuff here, you fix their gut and you fix the brain, and they don't need to be on high-dose amphetamines all the time. So interesting, in terms of the gut, brain, and everything. So.
It is, and that's what I would say one of the other things the hyperbaric chamber is really good at is healing the gut. So people with Crohn's disease, celiac disease get really good results there, and then of course they feel better and their brain works better.
That's awesome. All right, I got 2 giveaways. Got a question. Who knows the 3 membranes that you have to protect? I know, that's a tough one. You can just know the system. That's kind of a tough one, isn't it? Anyone know?
Gut, blood, brain.
What is it?
Gut, blood vessels, and brain.
Yeah, good. Fish oil. All right, got another one. Probably the nutrient that has the best data behind it. I mentioned it up there. It's like there's a mountain of evidence for it.
Vitamin D.
This one's got K2 in it also.
And can I give a shameless plug for Alfie? You can get vitamin D injections here if you don't absorb it through your gut. So I don't have a gallbladder, so absorbing fat-soluble vitamins doesn't work for me. 2 months of shots here, and I went from 46 to 89 with my vitamin D levels.
Wow.
So
Some people don't. I just had someone in either this morning or yesterday that I'm taking my nutrient. I'm taking it. Why is it? Why am I still deficient? There are genetic genes that convert the 25-hydroxy to the 125-hydroxy vitamin D. And so sometimes we just don't convert well. We might get plenty of sun. That's where a lot of people are, I don't understand it. I'm in the sun, and there are people that live on the coast that need the vitamin D. But the vitamin K2 in there is great for mitochondrial, and it also can reduce coronary calcium plaquing. And it's great for bone density. So they call it K-Force because they include it all together, and it's 5,000 vitamin D. That's the supplement company that I've used a long time, but I really like the nootropic. A lot of their brands, their energy of the Amari.
yeah.
Yeah, it was good. It's good. But anyone have any other specifics? Anyone for family member or anything? Happy to answer. Or if you think about it, put me aside in the office. Do you guys see me there?
No one mentioned turmeric. Is that something that?
You know what? I should have. So there's turmeric, which is the whole plant, and then there's curcuminoids, or curcumin. There's some debate and discussion around that now. Some of these companies have trademarked the curcumin because it's more bioavailable. Thorn is one that curcumin. Do you guys have a curcumin you like that you recommend typically?
We just have it built into one of the relief for pain relief.
Gotcha. And I love curcumin. And you know, it's used in cancer protocols. It actually shuts down some cancer pathways. It does cross the blood-brain barrier. My two things that I'll list if someone's inflammation markers are higher curcumin and fish oil, usually for starters. Yeah, no, good question. I love curcumin. There was an MDVIP article last year. I don't know if you saw it at all, but they do have some pretty good articles. But it was with the biopyrin, the pepper. Really what the article showed is it's very effective at absorbing the curcumin. The problem is it caused a little liver toxicity, which I've never seen in any patient in all the years I've been doing this. But there were a few case studies, and so I think it is. We have to be careful anytime someone's going to take a mega dose of something. You know, I think we have to be sensible with dosing. But I'll tell you, some of the cancer folks I know really blow up the dose of that. And so, yeah, I have some thorn curcumin. There's a liposomal version through Apex Nutraceuticals. That's a really tasty one. It's kind of an orange dreamsicle-ish. It's, you know, the liposomal preparations get absorbed pretty well. And so glutathione has some liposomal formulas out there. And so, yeah, sometimes the route of delivery can make a difference. There are some patches for people that can't take any supplements, some nutrient patches for transdermal absorption. But yeah, there's the NAD I will give another plug for. I am shocked. So my wife took it because we brought some to Texas. I was talking about the Texas-Oklahoma game. And she said, why have you brought that home? Because I feel something after these 2 doses. And so, and she's a skeptic. And Corinne, have you noticed anything?
No, because I only did that 1 dose. I haven't gotten to the bottle yet.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about it.
I am too. Yeah. It repairs DNA. I mean, it really is a fantastic nutrient. So the nutrients that they have here, Amanda, their IV kernel is fantastic. Yeah, anything else? All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for